All right, hunting by numbers. This talk was actually something that I originally gave at Wild West Hacking Fest. The premise of this is that hunting provides adaptability to your security operations center. And I want you to think, is my security operations center for my organization an adaptive responsive engine? Or is it basically there just to look good and check the boxes? Now, if you want to be responsive and you want to be adaptable, you need to have practice. And by practice, I mean an approach across all the things that you do that actually delivers that sort of capability. I do think that engineering is an important part of this. I'm not talking about engineering in this talk. I'm talking about hunting. And I'd like to ask you to go to the SOC survey website and take that survey. It is an incredibly valuable source of data for me and for people in the community. If you work in a security operations center, please take this year's SOC survey. And as I mentioned, the full version of this was actually delivered at Wild West Hacking Fest in 2020. Thank you very much, John, for pulling that together. It is a fantastic conference. So my hunting by numbers detailed plan of action is this. Every hunt starts with a pre-hunt plan. The pre-hunt plan basically allows us the ability to do consolidated metrics across all the action that we perform in hunting in order to demonstrate value. And because I think that hunting is undervalued, one of the things that I need to do is gain visibility on why this is useful for the SOC. And so I have the spreadsheet that I share. I do have an effort underway in order to move this to a script where basically you can launch the script. It walks you through the development of the plan in advance. Now, it is a little bit lame in the form that it's in now, but the data is normalized and you can adapt this for your purposes, but I think that I've covered all the things that are actually necessary. And so the syntax for the pre-hunt plan is some serial number. And this is repeated over time. If you run the same hunt, you run the same hunt serial number. If you want to change what you're hunting, then you can spawn a new serial instance. But each time that you run the same hunt, you will increment the instance number so that you can show that you're running the same thing over and over again. And my example in this case, and I'll get to this in a moment, is a hunt for our tools. We have some purpose in terms of why we're doing this particular hunt. This is sort of the premise of what we think the value is. We identify the data that we think that we'll need. We identify how we think that we will do that collection of that data, and then how we intend to analyze the data. Now, these things in advance should be defined, but it's not restrictive. You can do other stuff, but this is you planning it out. And as you do the same hunt multiple times, the plan should be closer and closer to what it is that you actively do. And then you can include references, links of where you got the idea, information of how you're planning to use a specific tool to do a specific thing. More details here in terms of notes and references and other thoughts. Okay. And so there's a lot of latitude to vary during that, but I want you to start with this plan. And I have this spreadsheet available for download, and I'll show you the link at the end of the talk. And so with this, every hunt then proceeds, and after the hunt, we actually have a report that we generate. Same sort of thing. I've got a spreadsheet. It shows you the data that you need to collect. You can turn this into a script. I'm turning it into a script, and I'll eventually release it. It's just that other things have gotten in the way of me actually doing that yet. And so here, the things that I want included in my report is a listing of the detects that I actually had. So just to count, we found 5 systems which were actually compromised during this hunt. Now this will probably mostly be 0, and that's okay. But another thing which is valuable from a hunt is operational capture of the action that you did. And even if it's just a file that has the notes of the actions that you took, that is operational capture. And the next time you run the same hunt, you can turn that sequence into a little bit of a script. And the thing after that, you can actually create a script. And so if you do end up with a script that implements the action for the hunt, there should be a path, wherever that is, Google Drive file share, your internal, file server. I don't care where it is, a listing of you on your, on your laptop where that script is. List it in there because we want to account for this so that if someone says, oh, well, I've Chris did this already, and it says in his report, I've got this script I could just use to run it again. That would be great. Another thing that we want is the idea of a posture improvement, and this is information across the entirety of the organization of, hey, while we were hunting, we noticed this particular problem. We think you should tighten this up a little bit. Now, I'm not expecting that it gets fixed during the hunt, but when we notice it during the hunt, here's how we account for that. If we create new network IDS rules, if you create a YAR rule, if you create a snort rule, if you create an X rule, I basically want that listed, and I would expect that you have some sort of discipline in creating rules inside of your organization. So I'm going to presume that you have a system where you can account for serial numbers of the new rules that you inside of your organization are creating. If you don't, fix that. And so the last part of this in our reporting is this hunt that I performed a candidate for a use case? And because this is the brief version of the talk, I'm not talking at all about use cases. Go find other information that I've already produced outline in order to understand what I mean by Security Operations Center use cases. And so what I'm trying to do is have consistency in my reporting coming out of my hunting so that the action that we're doing, which is intended to enhance the security posture of the organization, actually gets accounted for. And this should be relatively simple. Like this reporting schema should take you about 10 minutes to finish, at the most, to finish this. Okay? And everybody that participates in the hunt reports on their own. And then I can aggregate those across all the different people. Why? Because different people have different perspectives and takeaways on the things that they did during a given hunt. And you can hunt individually and you can hunt as a team. Both are okay, but I want each person producing a report of everybody that actually participated in this. This also helps me to gain insight, as sort of a team lead, technical lead, consultant, whatever it is. It helps me to gain insight in terms of who's doing what in terms of these hunts. Okay, because then that helps me to understand where I need to maybe push people a little bit harder, where I maybe need to redirect people's energy in some cases. I want each person reporting. And so the outcomes that I want out of this are really actual detects. Like I want an actual detection that occurs. That is the single most valuable thing that comes from a hunt, but I'm not going to get it every time, and that's okay. Still, the operational capture of the action of what I did and how I'm able to do that, as well as maybe some pre-collection for the future. Like, this was really useful, but I had to go pull it off of this one host. But, we could probably implement something that pulls all of that data off of all of the hosts so that next time we go to do this hunt, I already have the data available, right? Ideas for some use cases, really powerful thing. And then posture improvement for the organization. And by the way, posture improvement for us in the Security Operations Center in terms of how we could actually do this better. And then across all of this, I'm actually going to end up with a recap report where I can show the enhancements and the efforts that were made by the SOC team during the hunts. And part of this is just to be able to capture this, but it also helps us to then talk about what are we doing for the organization? And this takes the form, in my opinion, of reported metrics. And out of that report aggregation, these are the metrics that I would turn around and report to the organization. And I call them my constituents. These are the people that I'm defending with my Security Operations Center. This is what I would report to my constituents. Here are the things that we found in hunting as opposed to found through our use cases. Here are some posture improvements that we made, and this would just be a simple count. These would just be numbers, integers. Then I would also report on the posture improvements that we verified. We suggested that you do this thing, and hey, the next time that we hunted a month or two later, we saw that you did it. Thank you very much for taking security seriously. And we found in our hunting that you actually implemented that. I'd also like to correlate systems to the owners of those systems, because this is a gap that's frequently encountered in the Security Operations Center according to the people that I talk to and in my experience. And so if I'm hunting and I find who's responsible for given systems, but they did not participate in the standard identification and self-identification to the SOC, well, guess what? We found you. Right? That's part of what I want in hunting is like, hey, if you don't tell us about these systems, we're going to find them anyway. And so the estimated coverage is a thing that I think is incredibly valuable for us to report out of our hunting, which is, I did this hunt and I only touched 5% of the systems. Or I did this hunt and I feel like I touched 100% of the systems that I know about. That's a really interesting metric to report back to your constituents. And so here are the things that I would want you to do for hunting. And if you're thinking about adjusting your hunting program, try these as a sequence, right? The first one is hunt your own tools. So the point of this is that you're demonstrating that you can follow this reporting and planning procedure, which I'm suggesting. Focus on your own stuff first and show how this actually works. And I think everybody on your team should be doing this. Why? Because they might realize, hey, I didn't know we had that tool. Or I wasn't aware of that. Or your management might realize, yeah, we're not paying maintenance on this, right? So this is something that posture improvements are a thing that we love to throw over the fence out of the sock to other people and say, you need to fix your shit, right? Only we rarely reflect on ourselves in terms of how we need to fix our own stuff. So I want you to take this as an action item. Figure out what posture improvements you need to make in order to make your security operations center more effective with the tools that you already have. Because I almost guarantee you that somebody on your team, doesn't know about all the tools that are in place. And if you get to the point where everybody on your team knows all the tools that are in place and this hunt is like totally pointless for you, good job. Like, that's amazing. Most SOCs don't have that. Okay. And if you want to blow this off, I would suggest to you that if I came in as a consultant and I asked you if you could do this and you're like, yeah, and I said, show me, I bet it would be sloppy and ineffective. Okay. I bet it would be sloppy and ineffective. So my point is, if you can't show me how you hunt on your own stuff, I really lack confidence in your ability to hunt on other people's stuff. Okay. Another thing that should be actually kind of fun is the idea of applying a least frequency of occurrence type hunt. I don't care what you apply least frequency of occurrence to, but here I'm constraining your analytical methodology in order to actually say, show me how you hunt in this context. And there are loads of things that you could do. The point being that I want you to nail least frequency of occurrence type hunting. Right? You should be able to do this relatively easily and operationalize this so you're just sending yourself reports of things that are interesting. Right? Other people call other people call least frequency of occurrence by other names. Long tail analysis is one example of this, but the better name for it is least frequency of occurrence. Next one is hunting your constituent systems. And this is kind of a combination of the tech that you have in place plus OS int. I want you to blend any sort of open source intelligence tools that you have, plus any sort of data that you have at your disposal for your internal systems to not only fill out your inventory and catalog, but also figure out who's responsible for what. Right? Who's responsible for this system that keeps annoying me in my SOC? I'm going to find that person. I'm going to know who within the organization authorized that. Okay? And then I'm going to include that in my inventory. So that will make me feel better if I do that, right? And a lot of SOCs have a serious problem of just identifying the systems that make up their defensive topography. This is part of how you make that pain go away. Okay, and there are loads of posture improvements that'll come out of that, probably for yourself, but also for the organization. In terms of this, another sort of outlier detection is the command line lengths. And I'm sort of anticipating a posture improvement that I think will come of this, which is when we start reporting this to the systems administrators, showing them who makes the most typos, showing them how they actually type the same thing in 20 times a day, I want to compel them to have better operations to where they move toward scripting their own actions. And then I want to compel them to move toward digitally signed scripts so that I can actually have a very restrictive environment that allows the systems administrators to do absolutely everything that they ever have done previously. Okay, and that makes it a lot easier for me to identify adversaries performing live off the land type action, because the systems administrators won't have done that previously. I mean, you get my point with this? If we can get them to improve their their operational capability, it makes our defensive posture more resilient to adversary behavior. And the best way to do that is to anticipate how system administrators are working and then show them how to do their own work better based on the data that you've aggregated out of a hunt. I'm not telling them to change their behavior. I'm showing them how they can be better at what they do using data that I've aggregated. Okay. Then the idea here is, let's hunt for the next great idea about what we're going to hunt for. And that's stupid, I know, on the one hand. On the other hand, this is like our victory celebration. We got through these first 4 stupid hunts that Chris told us to do, right? And now we're going to have a little party. And if I were going to throw a party, my party would probably be themed around something that I care a lot about, right? Like cybersecurity or mezcal, right? And so I mentioned a whole bunch of additional resources in the full version of this talk. But the idea is that there are loads of ideas out there about how to hunt and what specifically to hunt. You get together, you decide as a group, here are the next 3 or 4 that we're going to do. Now, maybe you keep some of these first, 5 that I'm advocating for you to perform, and you cycle 5 more in. Or maybe you deprecate a couple of the ones that I've suggested because you feel like you've run them to ground and there's little value currently. And if it were me, I'd schedule this on a Wednesday at 2 p.m. as a meeting from 2 p.m. until 5 p.m. and then make sure that everybody had bottles of mezcal at their work from home office or wherever you're working from, right? In order to be able to make it so that your creative capability is enhanced, right? So the point is, I want you all hunting. And I'm trying to provide some rigor to the hunting program so that you make it so that you are hunting as a team and you're applying the rigor so that you can get creative and aggressive. Okay? And if you're wondering why a lot of the stuff that I do has this theme of a bird in it, well, my last name is Crowley. And so all the birds that I show are almost always crows or corvids of some form. And this is not my painting. This is something that I commissioned from Simon Bert, who I totally love his art style. And I figured it was a good thing to kind of capture the essence of what I think I do. So, in conclusion, I think that hunting is a terribly undervalued thing. And one of the things that I wanted to do for my SOC in terms of, actually detecting stuff, but I actually wanted to be the engine of adaptability for my security operations. And if I want that, then I need to actually show people how to perform that. And so my hunting methodology provides rigor as well as a capability where my staff has an opportunity to provide value by being creative and flexible. And so if you want to be responsive, if you want to be capable, if you want to be adaptive, you need to spend time forcing people to do just that. And that program that I just showed you there in 20 slides is exactly that. If you apply it the way that I just described, and that last hunt is always, let's get better. Let's do the next thing. Let's improve it. Let's make it bigger. Let's make it better. Let's make it stronger. Let's make it faster, right? Whatever you choose to enhance and improve, because the team considers that to be the appropriate focus of enhancement and improvement going forward, that's what you work on next, okay? And in addition, I think that you also need to have good engineering capability to be able to take the things that are identified in this adaptive space and time and turn it into a more engineered type application. And that's what I think about in terms of security operations use cases. And like I said, there's a whole bunch of resources that I've put out on the internet already about how to build use cases, but I'm talking about hunting right now. And I want you to unburden the hunting effort from the engineering tasks and put the engineering tasks in the engineering program so that that happens effectively as well. Thank you very much for your time and attention.